And I feel that in the Philippines, we've somehow lost a lot of that connection. Our stories, our myths connect us back to that past, connect us back to the greatness that was.
I'm the bad cop, good cop kind of conversation. Hey Zesties, welcome to the simulcast episode of the Gleeful Talkshow and the Nerdy Fangirl Podcast. This episode crosses over topics that would fit the two podcasts, so I thought that might as well do a simulcast, right? Thank you for supporting the show thus far, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to your podcast. It will definitely help a lot. We can also connect on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search Gleeful Talkshow. And if you want me to stay caffeinated, you can also buy me a cup of coffee or two. Just head down to the episode notes to find out how. I've also put up a Zestie survey on the episode notes so that I'll get to know you guys better and provide better content in the future. I'll choose one Zestie who have filled out the survey to give 1 month subscription of Blinkist. Make sure to key in your email address on the survey. Blinkist offers key insights from top non-fiction books in a made-for-mobile format. Learn anytime, anywhere. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I do have something to share before we dive in. I'm so happy to announce that this episode is recorded via Riverside.fm.
Powered by Riverside FM.
It's by far the best remote podcast recording platform ever. I've had my fair share of system glitches and bad recordings in the past, but Riverside doesn't disappoint and it always delivers. The great news is that they have a new feature coming in called Media Board, which I'm using now, and works as a virtual sound and video board, allowing creators to insert pre-recorded content straight into the live recording session. Ideal for podcast intros, outros, jingles, theme music, and ad reads. Riverside keeps coming up with all these awesome features, so don't miss out. I do have a coupon code that you can use if you want to sign up. You'll get 25% discount on the first 3 months of subscription. Just click on the affiliate link below so that you'll know you've heard it first from me. I do earn a little bit of small commission when you use it, so the reason why I'm sharing it is because I truly love this platform and wanted to share it with you guys. So please don't forget to click on the link on the episode notes and use the coupon code MEDIABOARD25 upon checkout. And so today we are going to talk about a Filipino animation series adapted from a comic book series entitled Trese, which is now available on Netflix. So I haven't read the comics yet, but I'm glad to be talking today with my guest / co-host who has read the comics and watched the anime as well. He is currently based in New Zealand, but which is also from my hometown, Cebu. Please welcome Ray Donn Lim. Hi, Ray. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Glee. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you for being on the show. And yes, so Trese, before anything else, we'll try not to be talking a lot of spoilers so that our Zesties will still like to watch it. But can you talk about what, on a nutshell, what Trese is about?
So, Trese is actually a mid-2000s comics that was created by Sir Bujette and Baldisimo. It's basically action detective story that revolves around Filipino mythology. The main character is Alexandra Trese. She is I believe the term is Babaylan Lakambini. Basically, she keeps a balance between the human world and the world of the spirit world, basically, in the Philippines. So the anime is a little bit more action-oriented than the comics, just to let the guys out there know. But it's beautiful. It's something that we could call our own. And it's something that I, on a personal note, wish could be more mainstream internationally.
Great. So you've mentioned about Babaylan Lakambini, and I know you are also fascinated about Filipino mythology. So for the benefit of our Zesties, so what is Babaylan Lakambini? Or, I mean, these words might be separate on their own, I think.
So Lakamini, I'm not entirely sure, but Babaylan, that's basically priestess or, yeah, priestess in our olden times. And I might be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, Babaylans can only be women. And, they are our connection to the gods. So, yes, while our pre colonial times in the Philippines, men did rule as datus, but our women also had very prominent roles. They were basically our connection to the gods. So Trese here is kind of like that connection, I would say, to the spirits, to the gods, especially if you read some of the comics or spin-off comics on Trese, and definitely also our protector. So Lakambini, like I said, I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to Google that. But to the best of my knowledge as well, it might be about warriors or whatnot.
So Trese is like a detective, but has it in the modern times, but also in touch with the spirit world.
Yep.
As we mentioned, mythological creatures that was shown there. So if you could share also to us what were your favorite mythical creature and why you are fascinated with them.
Yeah, so I would say well, outside of the anime and the comics, my favorite mythological creature would be the Encantos. I was tempted to think about aswangs, to be honest, because that is definitely what we have on the mainstream. But with Encantos, they're basically our Filipino elves. They are beautiful, noted as, in fact, gorgeous. And they're very good with illusion and deceptive magic, making you believe you're somewhere else. And and here's a caveat on that, there are persistent stories about them even to the modern age, especially if you go into the more rural parts of the Philippines. So that's why I could say I have some sort of favoritism over them and some sort of curiosity over them. If you work in the Philippines.
Encantos.
Yep.
Yeah, but because in Trese, I'm not sure which one is Encantos. Is that the women, the white women with Maliksi? Was it or
You
not
could,
really?
depends
They
on
were
who
not
you ask. You
really
could say
introduced,
that.
right? They
So
weren't
Ami and
introduced there,
Hana.
right?
Oh yeah. So they were wind spirits, and
Okay.
yep. So depending on who you ask, some might be more Puritan and say that they're anitos, which is really our sort of equivalent to something ethereal or spiritual. Yep.
Okay, interesting. So outside Trese, you were already fascinated with Filipino mythology.
Yep.
Back when you were like how old?
Let's just say probably in my early teens. Like I won't deny the fact that I've read more about Greek gods and maybe a bit more of other foreign inspired, I would say, mythology. But with regard to Filipino mythology, apart from the fact that we discussed it back in our schools when we were younger, I was just fascinated when I went to the library and read a bit about them, read about our creation myths, both firstly the Tagalog creation myth, which is more famous. It was about Bathala and a giant snake that he had to kill. And then of course, being the proud Cebuano that I am, I tried to see if we, as Cebuanos or Visayans, had our own creation myth. And lo and behold, we actually do. And one character in that myth actually appears in a Trese comic spin-off. Now, I won't spoil much of it. We can discuss a bit of that later. But yeah, so I just really love reading about stories like this, fiction and whatnot, and the connection that it provides to a pre-Spanish past. So for the listeners out there, we in the Philippines do learn a lot about our history when Spain took over our country. But prior to that, not many is known. And whenever we have that opportunity, or I have that opportunity to learn more about it through these stories, it's fantastic. And I really love it.
It's good that you mentioned because, for me, I really haven't tried to read most of them in the library. So were they even there in the libraries? Like I haven't noticed. I only would read Nancy Drew or something. So it's quite embarrassing, but
there is nothing embarrassing about reading and expanding your knowledge and enjoying life through books. Thing with me is I gravitated towards those, and it reflects on the kind of anime or shows that I watch, which is why I'm very interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe about Thor and trying to see the gods and whatnot. And in our own Filipino setting, I love that Trese anime. I love the Trese comics. And I love other books done by our authors when I have the chance to read them, of course. We can definitely discuss further about these authors or their books, rather. But just to name drop a few books like by David Hontiveros, the thing with David's books is that he tries to steer away from the mainstream. And once you do your own private research, you realize some of these creatures are actually present in Butuan or Bicol, those outside of Metro Manila. And it's amazing that way. So these are just some of the samples.
Great. So can we go back to about the Visayan creation? Because I'm not entirely across this topic. So if you could share to us what you maybe read, and at least we would be more appreciative of our creation story.
Okay, no worries. So just a little bit of backgrounder as well for our listeners. Glee and I are from a region called the Visayas, which is south of the capital. Now, the Philippines is very diverse culturally, if you search that on. And our creation myth differs, I would say, from the creation myth that most people who might know of. So in the Visayas, our supreme god is Kaptan rather than Bathala. So Kaptan, in his all power, of course, created the heavens. And then funny thing with this one is, the thing with our myth is that it's very much the same as, I would say, Western myths, wherein our gods are not perfect. Sometimes they're not even immortal. You can have them killed or they can die naturally. And this is what happened in our Visayan myths, wherein, if I believe, Kaptan's grandchildren decided that, we're powerful bastards, sorry for the language, let's go take on our grandpa. Of course, grandpa, being the all-powerful god, decided to teach them a lesson and kill them. Funny way to teach grandchildren a lesson. So his grandchildren became the land, became the moon, became the sun. In fact, it was even noted that the one that became the land was the one who led the rebellion. And this is also the interesting part, is how we show through our myths that even these gods, again, are not perfect. They might even be as human as us, because he accidentally kills his innocent granddaughter who was looking for her brothers. And Kaptan shot her with, I believe, a lightning bolt. She shattered into a million pieces. And when he finally calms down and regrets what he did, he turns her bodies, or the shattered pieces of her bodies, into our stars. See? So I see that. So it's like, wow, it's amazing how we are able to come up with these kinds of stories,
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that there are some similarities with Western mythology. And it's just fascinating to me that before there's no internet, they do not know about the lands outside the Philippines and how similar, or maybe like there are similarities in a way, which is like...
I suppose, it's just my own thinking that we turn into the divine, those that we are not too familiar with, or those that we see that we cannot reach. Like the sun, in many cultures, we see them as gods. If I'm not mistaken, Bathala uses lightning bolts. And who's a very famous god who uses lightning bolts. So that's how we see it. Things that that keep us in awe, that keep us in fear, we see them as gods in the olden days. Right now, of course, we have science. But there's always that beauty of that mysticism and that connection that it gives us to our past, So that's why I enjoy those.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. It's good that you have discovered them, because it's not mainstream, like looking at Filipino mythology. And so was this in the libraries before?
I would say yes. I'm not one of those, to be honest, I'm not one of those guys who during recess would grab a basketball and shoot some hoops. Like any self-respecting Filipino, I suppose, I do enjoy the NBA, watching my favorite teams win. But then I always found myself in the library reading about our stories, always try to find books that cater to that. And I know it's not Filipino, but Harry Potter made me want to take up writing. So I'm one of those guys who love the fictional world. And I won't lie, maybe because sometimes the real world is not always too good,
Yeah.
So
I can really relate to that.
Yep, exactly. So there is that. And with books, they say you can go visit the worlds. I'm going to elevate that argument and say with books, you can see beyond the world that you see in your eyes. So again, it just fascinates me. And I continue to be fascinated as I move along with my life.
Great. So going deep dive into Trese, What are your thoughts in Trese's character? Maybe thoughts on Trese herself as a character in the comic and the anime?
Okay, so Trese as a character, let's just put it out there. For me, it was a really good thing that she's there to represent us all. I would say she's a great ambassador to our stories and whatnot. And here's something that I've also read with regard to Trese's history. Now, Sir Budge and Kajo, when they created a Trese character, she was originally supposed to be male. And I suppose a lot of people didn't know that. But then, I believe it was Sir Budge who said that, hey, why don't we make her female? Because if we keep her male, she'll just be like any other action star. And, I think that's also good that we as Filipinos, I suppose, as a callback to our older times where we do view women at such prominence, we give prominence to the woman right now in the modern world, saying that, yes, our women are great. Yes, our women can also kick alien butt, or rather demon butt in this point, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Yeah.
And what I like about in our culture in general is, like Western cultures have really patriarchal society. I mean, we have that one, but the women is not like far behind. I feel that Filipino women are strong, are stronger.
Yep. On that point, I don't know if this is real or might be apocryphal, but friends of mine, really good friends of mine who shared, you could say, the same passion of reading about our history or whatnot, did say that our martial arts, arnis, in its pre-colonial form, was also used by women. And the reason why not many people would try to raid us is because when they do and they step into the house, our women would just beat them up. So I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't be surprised either, granting the kind of strength our women have shown throughout the generations.
Yeah, great. And for Trese in itself in the comics and anime, are they depicted differently, or what are your thoughts?
No, actually, they're virtually the same, So she's strong-willed. She's your strict bossing / ate to really, really rambunctious younger brothers, or in this case, the Kambals, the twins. I know they're demigods and whatnot, but you see that there's this brother-sister dynamics. And as somebody who's the middle child with an older sister, I know how fun it can be to just mess with the ate. And you can feel that sometimes with the Kambals. And you got Trese who just like, you know what, I'm busy and God, I don't want to deal with you guys, but you're my brothers. I love you. I have no choice but to love you. So I love that. I love that it's still there in the anime,
And what about the anime voice acting? I know this has really garnered some mixed opinions, I feel, with netizens. But of course, this is just our thoughts. So do not bash us, guys. So what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, so first and foremost, I will really claim that Tagalog is not my first language. It is a national language. Yes, I can speak it. I grew up in the Philippines. But like many Cebuanos, our Tagalog is not up to par, I would say. So I favored watching the episodes in English. And the thing with the English ones, I think they did pretty well in representing it. It was, I would say, it wasn't as great as it should be. It was serviceable. I like the part where the characters do not sound American. In many cases, they do sound Filipino, especially side characters like Captain Guerrero and Lieutenant Tapia. With Alex, I know she was done by a Canadian Filipina who is well versed in Filipino as well. I think she may have grew up here.
Did she?
I'm not sure. Did she move to Canada at 19?
Not sure as well. But okay, please go on.
No worries. And so I think she represented it still very well, still serviceable. But with regard to the Tagalog dub, I have seen the comments and I have watched at least one episode just to compare. Now, the honest truth is that Liza Soberano, the voice actress, it felt quite monotonous, her delivery. It didn't have the kind of emotional range that could have helped the anime. And yes, I know, I just watched one episode, but apparently those who watched the full shebang felt the same way as well. Now, again, for me, from a marketing perspective, I get where the producers were coming from. Yes, as an audience member, I wish they actually got professional voice actors. But see, especially for our listeners out of the Philippines, Liza Soberano is one of our premier TV actresses currently. And for her to have been brought in on a marketing perspective would really generate a lot of buzz, would really get people, especially those not familiar with the comics, to come in and have a look. Sadly, it didn't work out as good as people might have hoped for, but at least it got word out there. Do I think changes should be made in the next season? If we're getting a next season, season 2, then yes, I do hope. I think we could definitely improve it on that point. But again, this is nothing against Liza. Maybe it's a new venture for her, all right? What are your thoughts on
Great.
that one, though?
Yeah, so with what you said, that the English version had some Filipino English, or the accent might be, I felt not really. I felt like, who was that? Captain Guerrero, or, no, Anton, the father of Trese. He sounded like Nico Bolzico for me.
Oh.
Do you know Nico Bolzico?
No, I'm sorry.
He's not an actor. He is the husband of Solen Yusuf. And so he is not Filipino at all. Like, he's Argentinian, but is residing in the Philippines. So he speaks kind of like that. So like maybe like
a Latin American twang.
So yeah. So most of them, I feel that they are more Latin American, which, because a lot of Filipinos really are well versed in English, right?
Yep.
And we have a certain accent, English accent as well. I was wondering why they didn't get like maybe professional Filipino voice actors who speak in English. That's what was running through my mind. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, again, maybe it was just to generate buzz as well. And now that you mention it, maybe Captain Guerrero does have that, I would say, Spanish twang, partially. But I do still stand by saying that it does have, or they did attempt to give it a Filipino flair, because Filipino or Tagalog English accent, you can really hear it. And to that point of, again, professional voice actors, I get where they're coming from. They were just trying to market this and try to make it as international as possible. And if you deliver a movie and say this, it's in English, and then with really thick Tagalog English accent, it might fall flat. So from a marketing perspective, again, I get where they were coming from.
Okay, yeah, I get what you mean on that one then. But anyway, but also with my thoughts on, of course, Liza Soberano, I didn't know anything about Trese. To be honest, anything at all. Then it just showed up in my Netflix, recommendations.
Yeah.
And then when I saw some Instagram posts that, it's actually Filipino, then I started it. But I started it in English as well. And I didn't know that there was a Tagalog version. And when I switched to Tagalog, then yes, again, I was disappointed, to the point that, I prefer English as well, listening it on English. And the thing with their Tagalog subtitles is also different with what they are saying. So it's like, it doesn't reconcile so hard. So I was trying to, love the Tagalog version. And it's also the subtitles were wrong. Or I mean, not the same with what they were saying. And also about, Liza. Actually, if I would hear it, I wouldn't think that it was Liza Soberano on the mic, which is, kudos to her that she was able to really do that, like make a difference with what her normal thing, how she normally says Tagalog or something. But still, as I agree with being monotonous in a way. And even my husband who doesn't speak Tagalog at all, like, he heard it and he said like, what is that voice acting? Like, it's so dry. Like, he was like commenting, like he doesn't know at all anything about it. But I was mentioning to him about like, this is Liza Soberano and she's very popular in the Philippines and whatnot. So, but still he was, even like an outsider who is not Filipino, still thinks that it's kind of monotonous. And it's just, I feel there's a really big difference. Like, maybe it's because it's our first time delivering this to international audience. But if you compare it, like series like Game of Thrones, where actors were not really popular, like only few actors were popular there. I think like maybe Cersei or Tyrion, but most of them were not really very famous. But then that's how they started. But how Filipinos do it, or is the other way around. I know that's just what I feel, but maybe it's because they wanted it to be marketable in the international audience, which I think again is countering it, I feel, because if we want to market it into an international audience, with the word international, they don't know Liza Soberano. I don't know.
Yep.
It's just my thoughts, but yeah.
Yep, I get where you're coming from, and those are actually pretty good points. But we also have to consider that apart from the international audience, we are also marketing it to our fellow Filipinos, and they're trying to get it on a wider demographic. Now, if you're trying to get everyone on board, then that's where that name recall really helps. And I'll be honest, sad to say sometimes, yes, Filipinos do tend to defend to the high heavens our own talent to the detriment of something that could work far more internationally, So yes, there is that point, but we also have to look at it from a marketing perspective and of course from a budget perspective. You mentioned Game of Thrones. How many millions of dollars can be funneled into that to get people like Tyrion Lannister, Cersei, the actors to come in? We don't have that kind of budget, I think. So
I know what what I mean is like not the famous ones, but people like the Arya and Kit Harington. They weren't really household names at that time.
That's true.
But yeah, I really get what you mean as well. That from a business point of view, marketing point of view, then it would make sense to have. I mean, Liza Soberano, and of course, she is a very pretty face. So having that version again, but again, she's not full Filipino again and again. So I would have preferred someone like, I don't know, do not bash me, Zesties, or anyone who's listening to this, but I would prefer someone, let's say maybe still a household name like Catherine Bernardo, or someone who is like really Filipino. Like I don't know if we want this to be. I mean, it's not that Liza is less Filipino than we are, but I know you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I really do. But also, Catherine Bernardo, she also does have some name recall. I'll be honest, I don't watch our teleseries. Again, I do avoid them because, and I'm not really into drama. But again, I get where you're coming from on that end. Maybe it's let's be honest here. Maybe it's because Liza does have a prettier face, and I have seen her try to look like Trese. And look, as far as looks are concerned, she does nail it. She really does. And if it was live action and she presented herself as Alexandra Trese that way, she can do it. Definitely.
So, who is your favorite character in Trese?
So I would point out just 3, just to show you why. So Ami and Hana, of course, I would say from my perspective are my favorites. Reason being, I'm a guy. So listeners, please deal with it. Like with most guys, I do tend to be attracted to good, pretty women. And I like it. And they're wind spirits. They're actually, and if I'm going to be more technical, they actually have the ability to make things go really fast. And you've seen that in the anime. In the comics, they present it really well as well. So from that end, I do like that. The other one I would say is Talabugsao, the god of destruction. Those who, let's say family and friends who know me, know for my penchant for liking action flicks or fantasy anime. And if anything, they presented Talabugsao really well. Violent, strong, all-powerful, that even the main character truly would have a hard time beating. And I can actually make the argument, especially for those who've watched the anime, try not to spoil this, but the way they beat Talabugsao showed just what they needed to do just to be able to get one up on somebody who is virtually indestructible, right? Because he is destruction itself, right? So I would say that's why Ami and Hana, of course, the guy thing. If I'm going to be serious Radon, then it's Talabugsao.
Okay. You mentioned 3, so the wind spirits are 2.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. For me, I think I like Captain Guerrero actually. At first, I thought like I was like so skeptical about him. Maybe at first, okay, he's a good guy, but maybe he's not really a good guy because he's too much of a good police.
Okay.
But yeah, actually on the 6th episode, I'm trying not to spoil that much, but I thought he was actually the bad guy. Like he will turn into the bad guy.
I mean, I understand it because if you look at a lot of stories, a lot of anime, especially if you mentioned earlier Game of Thrones, those kinds of twists exist. And let me tell you right now, if you are a reader of the comics, you will see a huge twist on one particular character that I think worked out well in the anime. That you're saying, just to give you a clue, you're going to go and say, really? He's a villain in the anime? The clue's there? Guys, support our local people, read the comics, all right?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And so, any major differences that you can see with the anime and comic?
So with the anime, I did feel that it was more action oriented versus that of the comics. Not to say the comics didn't have its action. In fact, the books that had Talabugsaw had a lot of action. Thing with the comics, though, is that it highlights more of Trese's detective skills rather than her fighting skills. Also, in the comics, Trese uses implements to cast her spells rather than just, casting it in thin air. She used less magic in fighting and more with her physical combat, I would say. Let's see, what other differences? Again, there are some characters with some twists and whatnot. Just to let you know, Hank, the bartender in The Diabolical, in the comics, he definitely wouldn't try to dress up to impress a girl. No, he's not like that. So that's one thing. Maybe with the art style as well, I would say, because in the comics, it's really I would say more Filipino. In fact, Alexandra Trese looks more Chinese Filipino in the comics. In the anime, I get it that she is drawn that way because we are trying to reach a wider audience. And secondly, it's marketed as an anime, right? And in anime, wider eyes mean, I would say, has a friendlier tone, whereas smaller eyes shows a little bit more hostility.
Yes. Good that you've mentioned that because I wanted to say as well, the costume of Trese. If this was set in the Philippines, it would be too warm. Why?
Right. So I've never thought about it that way, but from my research, you would say, or just soft reading, Sir Budge and Sir Kajo did decide that Trese is to wear that kind of trench coat with that kind of Chinese style buttons or whatnot. So I know it might seem a bit too hot, but again, it does look cool. So maybe that's one thing.
Yeah, it is. It is cool. It's just, I'm just trying to be nitpicky here. So
of course.
Yeah, and then also I feel that since I haven't really read the comics, so I don't know how big the eyes or something. But when I saw Trese as someone who has not read the comics, has no clue, and is Filipino, I feel that she's not Filipino looking. That's what I felt when I first saw it. So, and she's also lighter skinned than everyone else there, I feel.
Right. You could say that
Again, I'm nitpicking, so...
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, personally, I don't know, because I look at Filipinos and we're a mix from dark skin to really light skin that you can't believe that they're Filipinas. So for me, the way Trese was depicted could be viewed as the modern Filipino. Like, can you truly say that right now, as a Filipina, you're 100% a Filipino? Very few can say that. Me, I'm Chinese Filipino. Looking at you, I'm thinking already she has Chinese blood or might even have a bit of Spanish,
Yeah, my great grandma is Spanish, so
there we go. So see, there's already that mixture. And Alex, I do feel that she's a bit on the upper strata in terms of class. So definitely, if you notice, if you look at the stereotype upperclassmen in the Philippines, they're usually fair skinned. Usually, all right. So I think that was what they were trying to depict. And with a house like what Trese had, you can definitely see that she's part of the upper strata. So
okay,
there you go.
Yeah. Great point there. Yeah, I totally agree. So it's just like I'm trying to nitpick something. Also, was it explained in the comics about being sixth child of the sixth child? And
yes,
because I felt that Trese is 13. Why not 13th child of the 13th child?
Okay, so my mistake. So to be honest, it wasn't explained what the mysticism is there on being a sixth child of a sixth child is. Or maybe it was and I just forgot about it.
Or maybe a theory. What is your theory?
There have been Western stories about a seventh child of a seventh child, if I'm not mistaken. There was even a movie about that. And there's some mysticism, there's some story behind that. And I think we might have been bringing that here because certainly I haven't heard about our mythology talking about a sixth child of a sixth child. Maybe we just borrowed that element from outside.
Because I was thinking her surname is Trese. Why not 13th child, the 13th child, But
could, I know. Now that I think of it, well, why not, right?
All right. And so, what are your overall thoughts on this?
Yep. So my overall thought is that it's an amazing anime, especially if you're a fan of Filipino mythology. Yes, it's It's not perfect. I will admit to that. But for a first time, for a fully Filipino story, it does represent us well. And I really do hope that it translates to more sales for Sir Butch and Sir Kajo's Trese books, and of course other books as well. We do have other great authors who do represent us nicely in that space. And I do hope it revitalizes that interest in ourselves, our interest in our own culture. Now, as a Filipino living in New Zealand, I get to see firsthand how the Maori, the local people of New Zealand, are very connected to their past, are very connected to who they are. And I feel that in the Philippines, we've somehow lost a lot of that connection. Our stories, our myths connect us back to that past, connect us back to the greatness that was, Not to say that we're not great. Filipinos are doing very well where we are, Australia, New Zealand, and US and wherever. But again, things that are our own, things that we can be proud of, things that we can look back and pass on to the next generation. These are things that are valuable. And Trese, again, I'm hoping, and our authors, I'm hoping, could revitalize, in that interest.
And then what mythology authors or Filipino authors that you could recommend to our Zesties?
Right. So I have prepared a bit of a list, but I'll just mention a few.
We're excited.
Yep. So you might want to have a look at the works of Mervyn Ignacio. He's the writer for Skyworld. It is actually set still in the Trese universe. It's a spin-off, but it goes to a different track. You can think of it as another universe. So it's like, how in Marvel they have multiple universes? You can consider it that way. Now there's David Hontiveros, and he does have quite a few stories like Parman, Craving, Xerox, and Takod. Now, thing with this is his books are written. He has a unique style of writing, which sometimes does not work for me, but the kind of stories he presents are, again, not your typical bash the enemy in the head kind of thing. There's actually, he tries to go beyond the common themes, and he tries to present stories outside of the mainstream Filipino stories that we know of. Craving, for example, is a story about a woman who's part owl that's set in the Philippines. There's Karen, another author that I did like, her book called Near Myth. She's Karen Francisco. So it's like a post-apocalyptic Philippines where our mythological creatures have taken over. There's another one, Eliza Victoria. And of course, here's something that I dredged up from my closet over there. And one of the books that I actually brought from the Philippines, it's called A Time for Dragons. It's an anthology of Philippine draconic fiction. So it's a good way to introduce yourselves to our Filipino authors. At the same time, it's dragons. And who doesn't like dragons, a lot of it is set in Philippine setting.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that, Ray. And where can we find, on the internet, these books?
In the internet, to be fair, I think Lord Google provides. So a quick Google search would really show that. A lot of these books that I mentioned, or authors that I mentioned, you can go to, if you're in the Philippines, you can go to National Bookstore, you can go to other big chain bookstores, and just go to the Filipino fiction section. And to be fair, a lot of these books are in English. So if you're like me, you struggle with Tagalog, then you can get the English versions. If you like Tagalog stories, we actually do have good ones. And there was actually one book that I didn't mention. It's called Tabi Po, and it was done by Mervyn Malonzo. And it's like this: Imagine Nolimi Tangere. That's that's a Filipino book done by our national hero. But but a lot of the characters are actually mythological creatures. Or to be fair, no, one character is an asawang. There we go.
Great. Thank you for your insights, Ray. And it was really a very enjoyable conversation.
Thank you.
I felt like I'm I'm bad cop, good cop kind of conversation. Yeah. Would you like to promote anything? Where can our Zesties find you?
For starters, I'm just your regular Joe. So I don't have any sort of platforms or whatnot. I just live life accordingly. But I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. Basically, you'll find me on Facebook. Just search my name, Ray Donn Masangkay Lim. If you want to talk about these stuff or just have a conversation, I'm cool with it. But I will promote, again, our authors. I'll promote that book I just shown, A Time for Dragons. Trese, I will promote that to the high heavens. Again, these are our stories. This is our past. This is who we are as Filipinos. And for your international audience, have a look at what we have to offer. See the similarities that we have to the rest of the world. And you will see that world kind of close in on just how similar all of us can be, right?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you as well.